talk directly into your mic. I've been told. Okay, we're all good? Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 21st, 2021 Pelham Board of Education meeting. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Since we did not have an executive session, I will skip over Sue's usual spot. So good evening and welcome to our board meeting this evening. We have a few very exciting things on the agenda. Tonight, the board is expected to adopt the 2021-2022 school budget, which will be voted by the community on Tuesday, May 18th. At our meeting last Wednesday, the board decided to reduce the tax levy increase from what was proposed earlier in the budget planning from 3.31% to 2.47%. We are able to accomplish this reduction by allocating an additional $550,000 from the debt service fund over the $1.1 million that was previously included in the preliminary budget proposal. These funds, totaling $1.65 million, will offset the increase in the capital budget related to borrowing for the 2018 capital improvement bond, which includes the construction of the new Hutchinson School set to open this fall, as well as the bond work at the middle school and high school, Prospect Hill, and Glover Fields. Tonight, the board is also expected to appoint the next principal of Colonial Elementary School, Rachel Garcia. While I will let Dr. Champ properly introduce Ms. Garcia, I wanted to take a quick moment, both as a Colonial parent and as a board member, to welcome her, and she's here with us tonight. We all look forward to working with you in the years ahead, and we're excited for this new chapter at Colonial School. We also would like to thank Susan Gilbert for coming out of a very, very brief retirement to serve as interim principal this year. Her gentle presence and years of experience help calm the waters in an unsettling school year. Additionally, tonight we have the pleasure of Ms. Sabia and Mr. Llewellyn's company. They will share a presentation on the middle school's efforts to be named a New York State School of Character. This was an ambitious goal on behalf of our fantastic middle school team, and certainly a recognition that we and our community should be very proud of. Finally, the board will have the opportunity to approve yet another out-of-this-world donation from the Pelham Education Foundation to help offset some of the costs related to full-time in-person instruction in our schools. When it comes time to approve this donation, I will have Sue Childs, our PEF liaison, read some statements on behalf of their president and vice president. Together with ongoing communication from Sue, who is the liaison, Dr. Champ, and Mr. Rickey, Julia and Rosemary helped craft an incredibly generous grant. It is also because of our community's ongoing generosity that grants such as these can be written. As you may have seen in the mail already, the Pelham Education Foundation has launched its annual Blue Ribbon fundraiser to celebrate their 25th year of partnership with our schools and their deep commitment to enhancing public education in our community. Please keep the PEF in mind and consider donating before their official Blue Ribbon Day on May 1st. And speaking of full-time in-person instruction, I want to thank Mr. Berkowitz, Dr. Champ, and all the 12th grade parents who joined the parent forum last week to discuss plans for seniors. Sue and I were happy to join on behalf of the board, and it seemed the dialogue was productive and very important. We are thrilled that our administrators were able to work to provide an option for our seniors to be on campus every day, and we look forward to an exciting end to this year for this group of students. Okay. This brings us to section 3, which is approval of the minutes. I'd like to take a consent of 3.1 and 3.2. Do I have a motion? Thanks, Vinny.
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 4 is next. It's administrative and committee reports. 4.1 is the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and good evening to everyone. Definitely an exciting meeting tonight and just a really special day for us for a lot of reasons. As I think everyone knows by now, we were excited last week to return our elementary students for full-time instruction. So I want to really thank our administrators for all the hard work that went into the planning, thank the teachers that joined that committee, and also our task force, who was key in helping us to bring our plans to conclusion and to get everything ready to put them into place. And as I visited the schools in the first week, and was there with, we've got Mr. Johnson with us here tonight, and to be visiting the schools with the other principals, it was such great energy. Kids were smiling, parents were smiling, teachers were smiling. There was tears. It could not have been really just a more exciting and energetic time. And I think everyone is just thrilled to have them back. And I know there was probably some celebrating going on around the community that day for the first time with all the kids back at school. But really just wonderful. And I have to really thank our teachers for their incredible efforts as they welcomed students back into rooms, reconfigured spaces, some still navigating, supporting students in fully virtual environments as well, but still continuing to do that with great skill and attention and care for those students. And it was just great to see teachers, that muscle memory of being in the classroom with your students and doing those morning meetings and student-centered instruction just came back so naturally. And to see almost a weight lifted off their shoulders was really, really just exciting. So they had a great week and this week, and I'm, of course, very glad that Ms. Sabia and Mr. Llewellyn still have the energy to be with us tonight as we open the middle school to full-time instruction this week. So again, lots of excitement, lots of just energy and new experiences, kids who are just so happy to be here, and again, teachers and staff with welcoming open arms for them. So I'm hoping that we can hear just a little tad bit from them too when they share tonight. And as Jessica said, we had a chance to meet with senior parents last year as we finalize our planning for the high school. So we did roll out, as the board is aware, a couple weeks back, a modified cohort model for the high school. That is still how we're moving forward. But we were really excited after having that conversation and really working, really getting a great understanding of the priority from our families. Worked with Mr. Berkowitz and Ms. Antonelli and the team, and were able to come up with a solution that would get our seniors back in the building as step one, so back into the library. But I think, I'm not sure if the letter went home today or not, I think they have continued to look at their space, and we're actually in a position where we believe the seniors will be able not to report to the library, but to report to class. And in most cases, not all, but in most cases, after they did further analysis, we do believe that there will be space for most of those students to be in class on a daily basis, our seniors. So kudos to them. And we are super excited to get them back next week. Of course, not as excited as we are to be having the Olympics this week. So, but again, really thrilled just to be able to have some form of the Olympics. Nothing this year has looked normal, nothing will, but it's a lot closer than it was last year. So I'm really excited. Yesterday and today, cohorted Olympics are going on, and we're just really happy that the kids are able to do that. And the teachers and staff, again, we thank them for their incredible efforts to make that happen. So we will continue with conversations about especially things like graduation. There's already plans in the works for prom, for senior talent show, and all those other types of senior events. So that's all really well in the works, and we are in discussions about graduation as well. So there will be more information coming out about that. We did get recent guidance on those big events, so we're just having to make sure that we continue to stay within those guidelines. So again, things are not going to look maybe the same way they've always looked, but we're definitely a step closer than we were last year. So very excited about that. I want to also, as Jessica did, I really am just blown away at the continued support of the Pelham Education Foundation. They, offered to support us in any way with our reopening efforts, and I just was blown away is the only word that I can think of with the incredible generosity that the PEF came through with. As I think everyone knows, we had lots of different equipment and furnishings that we needed to look at in order to make these back-to-school plans happen. Things from additional barriers, because the ones we had worked fine with smaller density in the classroom, but when you have a full class and you've got all those white borders on the clear barriers you can't see from the back of the room to the front. So to get new barriers, to improve the air quality in our rooms with air purifiers and fans. Even if you've walked through the cafeteria, I know most folks haven't because we're not having visitors in the building, but now instead of tables, which we had last year, we had desks for the first part of this year. Now those desks are gone and back in the classroom, so now there's card tables in the cafeteria. So, 150, 250 card tables. So those kinds of purchases are what have been necessary, and the PEF just came through in an amazing way and provided a major grant that took care of probably 3/4 of those costs in one fell swoop. So I'm just incredibly grateful to them and all their support, and even making it simple, for us to get that approval. They start to finish supported us, and just thrilled for that partnership. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from the middle school about their incredible work that they have done to become identified by the state as a school of character, and I know they are in process of pursuing a national certification. So we're hearing a work in process, but I think you're going to be very impressed at the work that has already been accomplished, especially to think that most of this work was accomplished during a pandemic in these really challenging times. I just think that is a great testament to the commitment of our building administrators as well as the faculty. It takes leadership to do difficult things like this, and I couldn't be more proud of the work, and I'm thrilled to hear from them tonight. One small kudos, and then we're going to get on to some of the big events of the evening. Another small but really pretty cool thing during the pandemic, at Prospect Hill, one of our parents who generally does our lunchtime enrichment put together a Prospect Hill chess team, and this past weekend in the K3 category, this team fielded a team of 3. On the team was Ari Drucker, Ethan Teitelbaum, and Patrick Vitale. They attended the New York State Scholastic Chess Championship. Ari came in first place in the state in his age group. Patrick was second place, and Ethan also did very well. As a team, they took 5th place overall in the state. So just amazing. Our youngest learners and the creativity of our parents and community to continue to support the achievement of our kids. So congratulations to them for their chess win. Tonight now I want to turn to one of the big events of the evening, which Jessica's already alluded to. We're very pleased tonight and honored to be making an appointment to become our next principal of Colonial Elementary School. So joining us tonight, we have Ms. Rachel Garcia, who currently serves as the principal at PS 175 in Manhattan. Rachel has an extensive career in elementary education, which is why she stood out as a candidate throughout the process. She emerged as an impressive candidate from a very diverse and talented field of educators. In particular, her skills as a communicator, as a collaborator, and as an educational leader at various levels throughout the organization really stood out. And this especially, as I spoke with references on Rachel, that was a recurring theme. Her ability to collaborate, to build a team, to communicate, and to involve everyone in building a vision for her school stood out. In her current role, which she's held since 2015, Ms. Garcia worked to build a strong sense of community within her school and to make PS 173 an inviting environment for staff and students alike. Over the past 5 years, she's overseen and helped improve the academic standards in her school by creating and facilitating a balanced literacy curriculum, developing meaningful professional development, and holding teachers to high expectations. Prior to becoming principal at PS 173, Ms. Garcia held positions as both assistant principal and literacy coach at PS 555 and Mount Eden Children's Academy, where she developed the K-5 literacy curriculum and supervised special education. These are key pieces that we were looking for the next leader of Colonial Elementary School. Her elementary school experience also includes time in the classroom, an 11-year teaching career in which she taught kindergarten, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. Hope I didn't miss anything in there. So very broad experience and very deep roots in elementary education. So I want to just take this opportunity to really welcome her to Pelham tonight. We're really excited to have you joining the team, Rachel. We're going to invite you up to just share a few words. And while she comes up, I want to again express my sincere thanks to Susan Gilbert as well, who stepped in for us in what could not have been a more unusual year, carried the torch. And tonight you got the chance to meet Rachel, and we look forward to the passing of the torch and to the next chapter in the Colonial school history. So, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you to Dr. Champ, her team, the board for this amazing opportunity. Pelham is an extraordinary place with high expectations, and a few things that stuck out, especially during the interview process and even right now. I can use my cafeteria voice. There you go. Just the overwhelming sense of community and pride that everybody has here, and rightfully so. It's really warms my heart to see how much support is given to their own. It really is. And I know that everybody in this room is committed to putting children first. And I'm so excited, and I feel so fortunate to be a part of this and to experience this with all of you. It's such a great honor. It really, really is. If anybody asked me what my hope or my dream would be for Colonial, it would definitely be to just continue to make sure that the students are happy, that they're safe, that they all feel welcome, that the staff feels happy, supported, and challenged, and that the school and the community really partner together to create just magical opportunities. I want to thank everybody here for your trust, for your support, and for just welcoming me so warmly to Pelham, where I know that together we're just going to make such a great difference. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to meeting with everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I want to thank the members of the PTA who were here today. We had a great turnout from parents and staff to welcome Rachel beforehand, and I think we all enjoyed it. It was the first in-person little celebration that we've all been able to have in a year, so it's a great occasion to start back to those type of in-person celebrations. So thank you all for being here in support of Rachel.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, and
That's
after, I
everything?
think we wanted to do one bit of business before we move on to the middle school presentation.
We thought we would just, I'd like to take a motion to move the personnel, superintendent's personnel recommendation section up so that Ms. Garcia's official approval can happen earlier in the evening. So I'd like to take a motion to move section 7 up in the meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue.
Second.
Eileen and Jess. Second and third. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I'd like to now take a consent for items 7.1 to 7.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Leah. Thanks, Vinnie. Any questions or comments?
And I just wanted to say, to recognize officially, 7.4 is a motion for instructional personnel, so very happy to recommend Rachel Garcia for your appointment tonight officially as the principal of Colonial Elementary School.
So we'll take the vote to make it official. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, we'll
All
clap
right.
again.
Done deal.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Johnson, for supporting her as one of the building administrators, along with
We
our
didn't get to
great-
have a party like this for Mr. Johnson last
I know.
year.
This is his party, too.
Your party too, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
But
Very
really,
good.
thank you. And Rachel, feel free, if you want to celebrate with your family, we totally understand if you want to.
You don't have to stay with us
Don't
all
feel like
night.
you have to stay all night.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, you
Mr.
might need to
Johnson,
stick
it's been a
around.
long day. You can go home, too.
No, really, thank you both. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so this brings us to another main event of the night, which is item 4.2. It's the Pelham Middle School presentation from Ms. Sabia, Mr. Llewellyn.
I don't know what I'm more excited about is meeting some of my colleagues in person for the first time. We've just only seen them over Zoom. We're presenting tonight, but thank you for giving us an opportunity to come and share our journey in becoming a New York State School of Character. I remember when I was interviewing for principal, which was a big dream of mine, and in the interview I was asked a lot of questions by a lot of people. And my recurring theme was that really one of my goals was to become a New York State School of Character. And when we took on our new leadership roles and having the best assistant principal in the world, I knew we'd be able to do this. We wanted to make sure the priority really was character education. While our school has maintained excellent academic programs and standings, proud curriculum offerings, student learning experience, becoming a IB World School, we felt that there was still a lot of negative interactions with students, demonstrating a lack of empathy and compassion, as well as some incidents of bias that we had to deal with early in our journey. So we have always found that our experiences in working with the Tri-State Consortium, International Baccalaureate, that working within a clear framework with specific objectives and an external and unbiased organization is an effective method for achieving significant and sustainable change within a discrete time framework. With this in mind, we began to really deeply research the School of Character program. Character.org is a national nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. It works with schools, families, workplaces, and communities to educate, inspire, and empower people of all ages to be ethical and compassionate citizens. And who wouldn't want that for all of your children? Each year, Character.org offers certifies schools and districts at the state and national level that can demonstrate a dedicated focus on character development, and their 11 principles for school is a comprehensive framework that provides school improvement for academic achievement, student behavior, and overall student climate. Up there are the 11 principles. Might be a little bit hard to read. It talks about school and community promotes core ethical values and performs and values a foundation of good character. School defines character comprehensively to include thinking, feeling, and doing. And so much of that goes with our International Baccalaureate IB learner profile traits. The school creates a caring community. The school provides students with opportunities for moral action. The school offers a meaningful and challenging academic curriculum that respects all learners, develops their character, and helps them to be successful. The school fosters student self-motivation. School and staff is an ethical learning community that shares responsibility for character education and adheres to the same core values that guide all the students. School fosters shared leadership and long-range support for character education initiatives. School engages families and community members as partners, and the school regularly assesses its cultural and climate. Based on decades of research on effective schools, the 11 principles serve as guideposts for schools to plan, implement, and assess and sustain their comprehensive character development initiatives. Each principle is further explained via detailed description, key performance indicators, and examples of successful implementation. So for each character principle, it's broken down, and it gives you all these different elements that you have to achieve, and you have to show impact data on every single element.
So for the past 2.5 years, we have used the 11 principles to guide our strategic planning to improve school climate at Pelham Middle School in alignment with our cultural proficiency efforts and our IB implementation. Our efforts have included formation of a school-wide activities team, known as our SWAT team, to develop and implement character-building activities, designation as a No Place for Hate School by the Anti-Defamation League. I should add No Place for Hate School with Gold Star distinction. I'll get in trouble if I don't mention that. Our work with Rosalind Wiseman, too, in collaboration with Pelham Together, create a student ambassador program. Our implementation of the One Clip at a Time anti-bias curriculum. Our expansion of IB service and action through class projects and our 8th grade MYP community projects, and the sponsoring of new student organizations such as our Common Sense Project, Gender and Sexuality Alliance, and Access Creates Equity, as well as many other positive outcomes, which we illustrate using our tree poster displayed throughout the school. So we're very proud of our tree, tying everything together. And as you walk around the middle school, which I know you don't get to do so much anymore, we have lots of our trees up. And then here's what I like to call our cheat sheet. This is a list of some of the many ways that we have and continue to address each of the 11 principles here at Pelham Middle School. So by the fall of this school year, we felt we were ready to apply for designation as a state school of character. The required application included demographic and testing data about our school, a description of our character journey, communication of our core values, and an explanation as to how we have implemented each of the 11 principles. We were also required to submit documents and photos supporting our implementation of each principle, as well as self-assessments and testimonials from administrators, teachers, parents, students, and community members. All told, our application ran well over 100 pages. We also were asked to include photos, and here's just a small sample of some of the photos that we included, featuring images of our Community Project Expo, student and grade level service projects, and one of our student sessions that was held with Rosalind Wiseman. And here's an example of one of the testimonials one of our teachers provided to character.org as part of the application. One of the greatest changes in our school has been the shift in the type of purposeful conversations we're having with our students. While we've always valued kindness and respect, our character education initiatives have given both staff and students alike the vocabulary and opportunity to emphasize strong moral character. When mistakes are made, teachers have the tools to turn them into teachable moments. We can refer to an activity or experience for students to make things more relatable. So then, in January, we were very proud to be designated as a New York State School of Character. Of the 158 schools in the United States that applied for this honor, only 76 were selected, and we were one of only 2 schools in New York State to be named as New York State School of Character. So, of course, I work with a very competitive former athlete, and we had any time within the next 5 years, because this is an honor that lasts for 5 years, to apply to be a National School of Character. So we were planning to wait 1 year. Schools usually wait a couple. But then I received a call from a representative at the state level suggesting that we apply this year. So we did. And as a result, and with all sorts of additional preparations, on March 16th, 2 evaluators from the National School of Character, who would normally have visited the building but can't under current circumstances, conducted virtual interviews with administrators, teachers, students, and parents for almost 3 hours. The National Schools of Character will be announced on May 11th. We were saying before it would have been great if it had happened in April, and we were sort of had this in our pocket to pull out. Unfortunately, no such dramatic reveal. But May 11th, they will be announced. We expect we would probably know a day or so before. So fingers crossed. In any case, we understand that this designation is just one step in our character journey. And I see that I've stolen your slide, Ms. Sabia. Once I get rolling, I just don't stop talking, unfortunately. So we plan to continue to prioritize character as we strive to continuously improve our school. And now I'll hand it over to Ms. Sabia for the questions, because that's the hard part.
Thank you, Mr. Wellen. And I want to thank Eileen Miller. She was part of the group that was part of the interviews. And it was important for the School of Character to see that the board supported us. And Pelham Education Foundation started us out by giving us that $15,000 grant. The day I went to present, I was asking for, I think, like $8,000, trying to come up with some money on our end. And they're like, well, why are you only asking for 8? We'll give you 15. I was like, whoa. So they really started us out with our student ambassador. Rosalind Wiseman's going to be coming back, working with our faculty and our students, continuing with our leadership program. And, you know, as Sean said, you know, this is just one step in our journey. And every day we strive to make Pelham Middle School the best place for every single student so that everybody feels comfortable. So thank you, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
I just wanted to say that as part of that interview process, I was given the cheat sheet so that I could kind of get up to speed on what I was talking about. And it's so incredibly impressive, all the work that you guys have done, and not just that, but then pulling it together in this application, which was just incredibly onerous. We are so lucky to have you spearheading this and continuing to move it forward, and I'm just so proud. So,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you. Hopefully, we'll have good news on the 11th. Otherwise, I won't be too happy, but I'm very competitive.
Yeah, I just want to say also that, it's really wonderful and exciting program. It's really amazing to see how quickly you've pulled this together and how you're continuing to go forward for national recognition. And, on a personal level, I have a rising 5th grader. She'll be in the middle school next year, so I'm super excited. It's just very, very cool to learn more about the programs that she'll be entering and engaging with next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I, before you escape, can I ask
You know how I
just-
love being up here.
I know, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you go back to the tree?
Yes.
I remember having conversations, Dr. Garcia and I in particular, a couple of years back,
Yep.
because we had a new strategic plan rolling out, and the school had gotten their IB designation, and then the School of Character, and there was so much on the plate. And I know that we had those conversations about how does this all fit together. So can you guys maybe talk us a little bit through that tree about how the overlaps that you found and the natural synergy between all these different initiatives and how they really do work and mesh together?
Sure. Well, we started out, it's kind of hard to see. We started out with being an IB World School. And I remember making, I don't even know how many presentations we made, Dr. Garcia. Yeah, years worth. And then, bringing Sean in and leading the charge to become an IB World School. And I always went back to those characteristics and those traits. And we always said, this is what we really want for all of our students. And then working with the 11 principals, it all kind of fit together. So I had, it's like those big bubbles, right? You have all these different ideas in your head. So Sean and I sat and we said, we've got to find a way to pull this all together so people can understand what we're talking about. So people aren't thinking we're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. So everything just really works together. On the bottom, you can't really see it, but it's the strategic plan. And then from there, that's the roots of everything that we're doing.
Yep.
From there, each of the leaves represent an IB learner profile trait as well as a character principle. And then underneath there are all the different things that we've done that kind of go along with that. So we thought, we better kind of find a way to pull it all together with our Pelham Pride and our Pelham Together and our IB logo. The new tree now has the new tree has another, has the New York State School of Character on it. And hopefully we'll have a new tree again, and that will have the National School of Character on it.
And kudos to our art teacher, Rebecca Schwartz, who's our in-house graphic designer, so we can come up with these crazy ideas, and she actually makes it look good for us.
Yep.
Can keep drawing
Yeah.
new trees.
And I loved it because they really did, and that's exactly what I wanted the board to hear, is all of this work is rooted back in the strategic plan. So cultural competence, whole child, and authentic learning are the roots of this that support the work. So I think that once again underscores the value of that strategic plan that the community and we worked together on in the direction that we chose to move, and it fits so naturally with IB, with these other initiatives. So thank you guys for taking the time to really craft that into a visual that helps to make sense of it, organize it, and keep it rooted in the work of the district.
I've been so impressed with the middle school before I had kids in the middle school and now as a middle school parent. And when other neighbors ask me as their kids are about to enter the middle school, I always say, I've lived through middle school myself. I've worked in middle schools before. I've never, it's a weird way of saying it, met a middle school that people have had so many wonderful things to say about it. Like, middle school is just a rough time. And this is just an example. But it's true. It's like the middle school is a gem in our community. Our other schools are wonderful. But it's hard to say that about middle school because it's just a rough time in development for children. And it's hard for all the adults around them to respond. And to me, this is just another example of how you continue to push the bar. To me, it seems like a wonderful place, but between all those committees that we sat on, Sean, for the IB World School designation and now this, it's just we continue to push the bar of excellence, and so I'm really proud of that. I was curious to see, middle schoolers don't talk that much, so I don't get a lot of update on what's going on from my middle schoolers. How would you say the students respond to all this programming? What's their take on this?
So, I think they're really enjoying it. For a lot of students, it's, we try to make it, put it in action. So we have these activities, and they're all rooted in different principles, but we show them how it integrates with everything else that they're doing. So they've responded very well. We've had so many school-wide activities, and as Sean said, so for Anti-Defamation League, No Place for Hate, you need to have 3 activities, but to be a gold star, you need to have 4. So we've already had 3, we've already planned our 4th. If they had made us have 5, we'd be happy to do that too. But I think the students really enjoy the activities, and you can see it by their participation. They're all involved, and there's different pieces that each of the students do, and then we showcase those pieces, and they're all really involved in it, so I really think they enjoy it.
That's great.
And how has this past week been so far?
Great. We were hoping for controlled chaos, but it's really been controlled. It really hasn't even been chaotic. The kids have been happy. It's been great. The teachers' comments are like, we feel like we're teaching again. We go into the classrooms, and their class is full of kids, and it's just wonderful. Our biggest concern was really the switch at lunch, because we can't fit everybody in the cafeteria, so half the students eat lunch, while the other half are outside at recess, and then we switch, so, I'm always waiting, what's going to happen in that. Everything's gone well. The kids seem really happy. When they're leaving school, they're happy. When they're coming in, they're happy. It's just, the middle school really is a happy place. And you're right, middle schools are tough. I always tell the parents, put your seatbelts on. These are the 3 roughest years you're going to have. The most changes in development happen during those years. And it really is a happy place, and the teachers are excited, and I think everybody's in a really good place.
I will also add, this is the 3rd middle school I've worked in as an assistant principal, and we had to enlist some teachers to help supervise students at lunch because we're using all these other areas, and now we have all of the kids in. So one of the things that I said to the teachers on the first day, that, getting teachers to supervise at lunch in any middle school is like pulling teeth. Please know, 1, it's perfectly pleasant here. 2, this is not a normal middle school. And I was in some very nice suburban schools, but it was chaos. It was awful. And you had to either pay teachers a lot of money or, twist their arms behind their backs. And our kids are just so wonderful. It's great.
Yeah, we have teachers, we have 2 teachers every lunch period that are in the cafeterias with our kids. So yeah, and the kids are excited to see them in there because they see them in a different way. So it's been really good. I feel like it's our first day of school all over again, but it's been great.
Can I ask one more thing, just not to prolong this?
Sure.
But it's not the most current thing, but it's something I remember that was very special. I thought about the middle school. I think it was before COVID. You invited me down, and you said, I want to show you something. And you walked me to a bathroom.
Yes.
Can you share?
Yes.
That.
We actually have pictures of it. I wish we brought it. We didn't include that.
I think we shared it with school.
Yeah, we shared it with School of Character. So the middle school students, we were having difficulty because there was some graffiti in the bathrooms, and we felt like the students just weren't really as kind and as they should be to each other. So we had a grade level meeting. We talked about it. So the next day, the 7th grade decided that they were going to start something in the bathroom. They took Post-it notes and wrote really kind statements. And the first statement was, this is not graffiti, please don't throw it out. And then, so they had Post-it notes and markers in the bathroom. And there were hundreds of statements written throughout the entire bathroom. And afterwards, some of the kids that actually did the graffiti were the ones that decided to do this. They kind of felt like they wanted to give back to the school. It was just a wonderful experience, and we still have pictures of that. And outside Ms. Pinsker's room, she's one of our English teachers, they have a kindness wall as well. And so there's statements up there. And last year in the back of the cafeteria, another group started it. So Post-it notes with, just all kind statements all around. And we hadn't had any graffiti after that. So it was just a good way for the students to feel like they could give back.
Yep. And I got to say, I worked in middle schools for most of my career too, and that doesn't happen everywhere. So kudos to you guys. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you for all your
To
support.
set this culture and climate of high expectations and strong character. It's making a really big difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We'll have you back for a grand announcement.
I hope so.
Okay, so now this brings us to 4.3 Board of Education Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports tonight? Eileen, did you have a?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so we had a cultural competence meeting last week, I guess. And again, last time I reported on it, I talked about what the different subcommittees were. Those subcommittees pretty much met again the whole time, but we all the subcommittees agreed that we would be ready for the June 16th Board of Ed meeting to come forward and make recommendations based on the different work that the committees are doing. So, for instance, I'm in the policy and hiring practices subcommittee, and we at that point will have come together with a draft equity policy that we would then send to the policy committee. So nothing is final. It's all kind of just the actual recommendation from the committee. So we're excited about that. I think it feels like it's more and more progress every meeting now. So that feels really good.
Thank you. So 4.4 is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Dr. Garcia.
Hi, good evening. My past few reports haven't really been on things which are authentic, specifically state tests. So I do want to spend just a couple of minutes on that with the state exams in New York. So our children will be, who choose to take the test, will be doing that next Wednesday, the ELA exam. However, we're in the middle of the ELA testing window, and lo and behold, many school districts actually administered them today. And the feedback that we've been getting is that the state, in their session 1 exams, which is what the only kids, that's all they take, about 4 reading passages, about 18 multiple choice questions, the state actually just copied some old tests and gave it to the kids, which means that they actually copied questions that were previously released on the state website from like 2018 and 2019, which teachers and the public can use to review with kids before the new year administration. And a lot of students reported back to homes that, hey, Mommy, I read this question already. I knew it. So and it kind of created a firestorm. And now the state has taken down those questions from the website. So you can no longer find those old test questions on the New York State website. But really the moral of the story is that the state really didn't take the time, care, or effort to actually develop new assessments for children. And that kind of leads us to think that maybe they didn't have as much intent in terms of using this data for certain ways to measure student growth and achievement. And that's disappointing, right? I mean, it's disappointing as a parent. I think it's disappointing as an educator too, because there is a lot of effort to find ways to administer this test, make sure that people are well informed and prepared to take these exams. But this year, it's unusual, just like in the past years. So, one thing that it's important for parents to understand is that, it's their choice for their children to whether they participate in these exams. I think we made the right decision by offering that to happen on the Wednesday afternoons, because that means we're not wasting instructional time in those morning sessions, which I think is very valid as a parent. We just welcome those students back to school. And we'll be ready to provide those experiences for kids who would like to take them. I think there's an argument that could be made by some people to say, hey, my child's never taken this type of test. No harm in having them practice it and take it, which I understand. And that's probably one of the best reasons if you're a parent to say, hey, let's have my child at least sit for it, especially if you're, I think, a 4th grader, because last year there were no exams. So you just want to give them that experience to sit there for 90 minutes and, read a few passages and bubble in some choices, which is essentially what you'd be doing. But for others, it's really maybe an opportunity to do something else for the kids. So, and I respect all those decisions. I think we respect all the parents to make those appropriate decisions. And if they ever have a question, we ask the parents, please speak with your principal, speak with your teacher. Even though you maybe filled out a survey a certain way, you may want to change your approach, just contact the principal and we'll bubble you into some other time, and that's fine. It's appropriate that I think parents make that choice for the children this year. And it's just a little disheartening. Let's just put it that way, that you expect that the state would come up with a better approach. It just shows you, I think, at least in my personal perspective, that they never really had a care to kind of really delve too much into those assessments. And I think that actually is a dangerous thing as well, but that's I guess another story. But these assessments in the past have been used to sort of just measure student growth and try to identify how children are progressing. And I know there've been a lot of questions in the past, and we'll talk about it even more. Okay, so how do we know our students whether they're learning? And we've talked about, I've mentioned before the different types of benchmark assessments we use. So, I just mentioned a few this year. So we do keep a track and we monitor student progress, especially at the elementary schools. We have a nice little list, and we kind of look at student progress in the fall, in the winter, and then also in the spring. In reading, we look at the DRAs, which are the developmental reading assessments. We look at the Fontes-Pinnell, which is different types of assessments in reading, something called the Benchmark Assessment System, or the BAS. You may have heard that before. Also, we use the TC Reader's Rise Workshop approach, and we use a method called taking running records on student learning and student reading, looking at word reading accuracy, looking at the types of mistakes the reader may make, what type of corrections they make, and also their reading strategies that they use. So that's what we use to focus on reading. But we also have the Ames Web data, which we offer. It's more of a standardized type of assessment on our children. We offer that 3 times a year. And with Ames Web, we have a battery of assessments that we ask students to complete. In ELA, some type of assessments are letter naming fluency assessments, letter word sound fluency. In math, we look at number naming fluency, kindergarten level. We look at concepts and applications. We look at computational fluency with students. So there's a battery of assessments that we give them 3 times a year. And those are the major indicators for us in-house to see how students are progressing. And what we usually do, and we're doing it again this year, is we take the names of the students, right? Each individual school, they go through the MTSS committee, talk about how students can be supported during the school year. But then that's sort of our basis list of students who we would invite to a summer academy program. And that's really the approach that we're looking at this year as well. So we have I'll tell you right now, about 80 students that we would invite to work with us over the summer, work with our children to kind of continue their growth in literacy and also mathematics. And that number right now isn't too abnormal from the past. So some people say, hey, we're so far behind and students are far behind. We can delve into that another time a little bit more deeply, but right now, that number has sort of gone up and down, but that's not the highest level of students that we've had in terms of the number of students as maybe a few years ago, which is kind of encouraging. But that's sort of the first layer. Then we'll go dive deeper and see if there are other students that we can kind of capture and provide some supports over the summer as well. So that's what the administrators and the teachers in each school, but also our literacy specialists or math specialists, kind of identifying children right now who could use certain supports over the summer. And then we're at this point, trying to pull that together to see what are the programs we want to offer our children. So I just want to kind of give you just a little bit of a snapshot about that. And I know that on Monday we're going to be speaking a little bit more closely with the administrators in terms of, logistics and what that could look like, which we'll share with the board and the community.
Steve,
Yes.
you had something in the Friday letter about the percentage of kids opting in and
Yes.
opting out in K-5 and 6-8.
Yes.
Can you just go over
Sure.
those again?
And those are composites, right? So it's combined. Each school fluctuates a little bit.
Yeah.
But right as I looked at the list actually today, in grades 3 through 5 across all 4 elementary schools, about 44% of the children will not be taking the ELA math exam. which means obviously 56 will be taking it. I think that's correct. So that is as of today. In grades 6 through 8, it totally flips. So about 64% of the children will not be taking the ELA or math, and about 34 intend to take the exams.
Thank you.
Sure.
So Steve, what I think I'm hearing you say is, based on what we've seen from these early ELA tests that the other districts have taken, sort of supports this notion that the idea of state testing this year was very up in the air all year.
Yes.
And not something that anybody was really planning for.
Yes.
And so the state is obligated to offer it because it's a national
Correct.
mandate, and they have to offer it to our students. But
Yes.
that's why there hasn't been as much emphasis on it
Correct.
from Pelham this year, because
Yes.
it also runs in the crosshairs of us trying to bring our students back.
Correct. Yes.
And it does sound, you've always spoken about the local exams that we offer, but it sounds like students have been assessed all year and will continue to be assessed on various data points, so that
Yes.
the teachers do have a really good handle on where students are. And
Yes.
certainly as they're here 5 days a week in the classroom, they'll have an even clearer sense
Yeah.
of things that could have been missed along the way.
Correct. And I think, Jessica, I think you make that point poignantly, I think, especially with the kids here now every day. Nothing will be a substitute for any type of enrichment or support program will not be as important as having the children here every day with their teacher in the classroom. I think that will really assist us in understanding the children more over the next month and a half, 2 months, and really give, I think, a good basis to help the kids get back on track. And I think if you visit any of our schools in the past week, you can see them in really deeper learning than they have been, obviously, in the past 10 months. But why? Because they're in front of their teacher, they're working with them, they're working together. It's a joy to watch. I mean, I spent some time at Prospect Hill yesterday, and just having the students being able to go outside and just read, right, with their teacher, learning with their teacher. I've been observing a lot of classrooms the past week at the elementary level, and there is such a happiness with the children and an engagement that I think is really what we're looking for to make sure the students really get back on that level of performance. I really don't know if there's this true level of like we're so far behind. I think it's at that point really making sure the kids are just back enjoying learning, and that's what we're seeing in the classroom. So as we gather more data, we'll share it with the board as well, and that will really be the impetus of understanding what type of things we offer for the in the summer for kids, and also how we, I think, develop our programs for next year and what type of supports we need for the kids next year.
Yeah.
I think these 2 months really are the important time for us to understand our kids again.
And oftentimes parents wonder, if my child's struggling, how would I know? I mean, I think that's where the communication from the teacher and the MTSS team is so critical, that I think parents would know at this point in the year if their child had been falling behind in a significant way. They'd
Correct.
probably be receiving
Yes.
some supports along the way.
And of course, as a parent myself, right? I think you should always feel comfortable as a parent just to contact the teacher, saying, how's my son doing? What are things? I mean, this conversation I have with the teacher, with my son's teacher, in my home district is, what does he need to really focus on maybe over the summer that I can do with him to kind of make sure that he keeps up on pace? Otherwise, he'll be playing video games all day. But I think that's how a lot of parents feel. Like, I don't think parents should get to, this is really me speaking more as a parent, but feeling that, oh my God, we're just, like he's at maybe so far behind in the other students. First of all, we have data which would give us that information. The teacher has it. But the state test really won't tell us that. And if parents really shouldn't expect a state report that says from a state exam, which was really like 18 questions long, how they compare their child versus other children. It's not, I don't think that's really what's going to show you this year on that score report. I also don't know when you're even going to get those reports. So really the first thing is just speak to your child's teacher and just have that conversation. Even if when you go through their book bag and you kind of look on their their Google Classroom. You kind of want to see what they're doing. Just it's always the best, I think, avenue of communication. Just to ask the teacher, how's my son doing? How's my daughter doing? What do you think that we can do to kind of help them along, or things that you think they may be missing that we should be ready for especially if they're going to 5th grade or 6th grade as they move to the middle school.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. So
Thank you.
MTSS was our segue to Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child. Ms. Chung.
Good evening. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about social-emotional well-being of our kids tonight. One of the things that the task force, the subcommittee had recommended was providing some training to parents. And so as the students are returning full-time in person, we've been offering parent training, really kind of separating like K-5 versus 6-8 versus 9-12. And so we've already had K-5 and 6-8 parent meeting. And then tomorrow night is going to be the high school workshop. It's being led by Dr. Magda Buchek from Cognitive Behavioral Consultants. We've been working with them for now 3 years. And she's been really wonderful support for our DBT program. So she's the one who's been providing. The other thing that I'm doing right now is I sent out a survey to the full virtual parents, trying to get a better sense of what their specific concerns are, because I want to make sure that whatever their needs are, we're meeting that specifically. And I want Dr. Buchek to be able to kind of tailor it to their needs. And so I sent that survey out today. So hopefully I'll get some response back, and then we'll make sure to provide a separate training just for the fully virtual families. In regards to the high achieving school survey, we actually yesterday we had a meeting with Dr. Luther, who is one of the co-founders, and she gave us like a broad overview of the results. And we had many of the administrators. Dr. Champ was on there. We had a couple of board members, some of the wellness committee members, and so it was really great information but it was very broad. And so we're going to be able to get access to the data set so that we can kind of dive into really more to the specifics. One of the things that I think we're looking at is not only the results from this year, but we're looking at two different things, comparing how our kids are doing versus everybody else around the nation in similar school districts. But also we're going to be looking at the 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, how they did 2 years ago versus how they responded this year. So we'll have a couple of different perspectives on that survey, and we'll share the results. But we will also make sure, Laura Caruso and I are going to be meeting to figure out when we could have Dr. Luther back. I know 2 years ago we had Dr. Luther who did the presentation and made recommendations, so we're going to try to do that again this year, probably sometime in May, in a couple of weeks. So we'll plan on figuring that out, and then we'll share it with everyone. The other part about this high achieving school survey is there were some middle school parents that were concerned about some of the questions, and they felt that perhaps it might have been a little, I guess, not age appropriate. And so what Dr. Luther had, actually she suggested it when I spoke to her about it. She said she's willing to have like a town hall meeting with the parents. And so Ms. Sabia and I are going to be meeting with Dr. Luther, and I believe Ms. Sabia has already sent out the link to all the middle school parents. If anyone has any concerns or questions about the survey questions and the process, they're welcome to join us and just ask any questions, and Dr. Luther's willing to entertain any concerns or questions about the survey. So we're doing that next Monday. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to say, having her walk through the data was again just illuminating, and I was really glad that we were able to do it at every grade level this year instead of just 8, 10, and 12. Mainly because you could really drill down specifically to cohort. And there were definitely, they pointed out to very different patterns at different grade levels for us. You could split it by gender, by non-binary, by grade level. There's just so many different ways to manipulate the data, which is really going to give us the ability to target programming and Pelham together as well. to develop the targeting. And the other thing I really liked about it is they did the comparison during the pandemic. It wasn't a we can do the longitudinal look, but they really were attentive to assessing and comparing within the pandemic timeframe, which I thought was really smart, because that way you really are looking at apples to apples and understanding how we stand up to, against other districts. And it was really, they were thrilled with what they were seeing. No one's perfect, but they said really we should be very proud of a lot of supports and things that have been in place and how our kids are doing.
Dr. Champ, I just want to clarify one of the things you just said, that you could see it by cohort. You don't mean A and B.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're right. Cohort is taken on a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
You could see, you could drill down to by grade level,
Right.
and by other various factors, not cohort A and B.
Right.
Thank you.
And
for that
definitely not
clarification.
down to the individual
Absolutely
level.
not to the
It's
individual
totally
student
anonymous.
level. It's anonymous. But enough to make meaningful decisions about programming for grade levels in particular.
I liked that you could sort of track the development of a particular class over time, which looks like it will be very useful, and then you can sort of suss out, are the effects environmental, is it the age of the students at a particular time, or is there a blip due to the pandemic? And I think it'll be very interesting to see how, the 10th grade 2 years ago, how their responses changed over time, and the other classes as well. So I'm excited to see the data and for the community to see as well how the kids are doing. So thank you, Julia.
And I think one more area that I know by doing every grade level, there was one area, there were some concerns that came up for ninth graders very specifically. And we've never done ninth graders before, so this is actually very interesting that we'll be able to kind of see what happens from the middle school to high school transition and what the needs are. So definitely, I think this is going to give us a really great view for programming for next year, and partly how to spend the $800,000 that we will be getting the federal money. Perhaps we can utilize a small part of that towards programming for next
Targeted
year. So.
intervention. Most definitely.
Let's see, we're also planning a grade level assembly for our high school students during the month of May on mental health awareness. The JCK Foundation speaker is going to be, it's a foundation by this gentleman who actually lost his best friend to, suicide. And he's founded this foundation where he's going around to high schools and talking to students about mental health awareness. And he's a nationally known speaker. And this is a program that actually Kristen Quintano and Laura Caruso had talked about and they'd seen before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and so we weren't able to follow through with it, but I'm really happy that we're able to bring them in this year. So we'll be doing that by grade level, obviously, because we want to be able to kind of address questions based on their age level. So that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. The last part of my, update today is just about COVID. I think we're all experiencing COVID and quarantine fatigue. I am personally experiencing contact tracing fatigue, but we're unfortunately not out of the pandemic yet. And I just want to remind everyone a few different things. First thing is, we do continue to have individuals testing positive, which triggers quarantining. The contact tracing protocol has not changed, even though they have allowed us to have students within up to 3 feet, or outside of 3 feet, down from 6 feet. But they haven't changed the quarantining rules, which means as kids are sitting closer, we're gonna probably end up having more kids who are gonna have to quarantine. The requirement of the 6 feet, 10-minute rule is still in play, which means that if you are within 6 feet of a positive individual for more than 10 minutes within a 24-hour period, you are considered a close contact. So you will have to quarantine. The only way to be exempt from being quarantined, I guess there are two ways. One is if you had tested positive within 90 days from the day of exposure previous 90 days, then you don't have to quarantine. If you're fully vaccinated, which means it's been 2 weeks post your second shot or Johnson & Johnson shot. So it cannot be 10 days, it cannot be 8 days. Fully vaccinated means 2 weeks posted. And so the date of exposure has to be outside of 2 weeks. So those are the only 2 ways. People cannot test out of a quarantine. I know that CDC has something else out there, but New York State does not allow that. So they have to finish the 10-day quarantine. I'm sure many people are aware in the last few days, it's been quite challenging with our football team getting quarantined, our volleyball team getting quarantined, and they're both considered high risk. High-risk sports do not have the 10-minute window. It's if you come in within 6 feet, even for a couple of seconds, you have to quarantine, which is why they quarantine the entire team or anyone who is actually on the field or on the court. And so that's been what the Department of Health is kind of doing. And so it's been challenging. I know it's very frustrating for parents. It's frustrating for students. I'm doing my best to not quarantine students to the extent possible. You know, when we're talking about classrooms, the last few days, I've been going up to the classroom to look at the classroom and measure how far the desks are apart, because they used to be 6 feet apart, but in the last few days, we brought more chairs up. And so now they're about 4 feet apart. 5 feet apart, and students are not necessarily sitting in every other seat. And so I have to see where the student is, and I have to look at the classroom. And so I am really trying really, really hard to not quarantine students, but if it's within 6 feet, I have to quarantine them. So, you know, that's kind of been the process. Let's see.
In your contact tracing, have you been able to discern whether most of the transmissions have taken place in the schools or outside of the schools?
I would say they've been mostly out of school. Obviously, I am aware of like certain, students who are very friendly and they end up both getting positive and things like that, but they're not necessarily from being in the classroom. But again, all of our kids have been 6 feet apart up until now, so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I would say mostly out of school. Let's see. So, in order to minimize quarantining, which means we want less number of people testing positive, I just want to remind everyone, please practice responsible interaction outside of school, because within the school, kids are, for the most part, really good about wearing the mask. They're great, really great about they're following everything we're asking them to follow. But I know that once they leave school or they're off campus, it's a little more challenging, and it's nice outside. So I encourage students to please go outside, stay a few feet apart. You can still talk and chat and do what you need to do. And so that's just my request, please. Thank you.
And I really thank Julia. She has taken the brunt of a lot of frustration lately in particular, and she's been just doing such a consistent and thorough job since the beginning of this, and it's gotten harder and harder and harder. And I know tonight we're even approving the next season of high-risk sports, and it frustrates all of us. The things that seem common sense to us and that are supported by CDC, the state just continues to lag in their adoption of those new regulations. So it is an absolute frustration to us as it is everyone else. I just ask folks to remember she's the messenger, not the originator. But Julia, really thank you for continuing to wade through some really difficult times. The end is in sight, I think. But yeah, I would say that's the one thing I would certainly, that is the best reason in the world right now to get vaccinated for our students, because if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to quarantine. And there's a lot coming up for our seniors in particular, even some of our juniors who are of age, that we really just strongly urge them to get vaccinated as soon as possible. And there's lots of appointments available now. So, but again, thanks for all that hard work.
Okay, 4.6 is Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities, Mr. Ricky.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. I've got a couple of updates, and then I've got a final quick presentation on the budget, so I don't know what your pleasure is. You'd like to...
You want to go a little closer to your mic, Jim, if you could.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
How are we doing now? We're doing better. Budget presentation first or updates?
Updates.
Updates first.
Yeah.
Terrific. Just very quickly, construction keeps moving nicely along with our capital work. Hutchinson, for this week, we've got 6 change orders for just under $14,000. Again, these are notifications for the board for minor items as they come up. And again, the purpose of this is just to notify the board. They've already been approved as through the authority provided by the board. And this allows work to continue. And that's really terrific. If you're interested in seeing the school, please reach out to myself or John Condon, and we'd be happy to make ourselves available. It's really looking fantastic, and again, it's going to be great. The installation of the batting cage and the turf completed at the Glover complex. I think it looks better than a lot of professional leagues, the lower level professional leagues. It's really something else. Our baseball team is on it, and we're really excited that it's back in service. Prospect Hill work continues. The footings were supposed to go down this week, so hopefully if the weather continues to be to play with us, then if it plays in a bad way, we're not going to be able to get it down. So if we have good dry weather, we'll be able to get those footings in. So I know 2 days ago they had the concrete. I don't think they were pouring. Today I think they were worried about the rain. But again, we're getting there, and we're excited to have that work move along. And then with the interior renovations here as well, we had a walkthrough this week for the contractors to come through. Actually, that happened today. So we're getting ready for that, for the interior work. And certainly one of the things we talked about with them is for non-gender specific bathrooms with hallway entrances. And we really think we've identified at least one, maybe 2 specific areas. So without much additional work required in order for this to happen. So they're aware of what we're looking to accomplish, and we think that these are feasible, given the timeline that we have and the cost structures too. So that's really terrific. We've got a couple of items this evening. We're asking the board to approve 3 bids. We regularly put out different bids from working with different vendors, and as you look at those responses, you'll see sometimes the prices can vary, and I think some of that has to do with bidding strategy because these are all sealed bids. And again, some vendors sometimes, they may not need the work, but at a certain price, they're willing to do the work. And I think what we've found is in this particular instance, we're replacing some past vendors with new vendors. And some of that has to do with Mr. Condon having past relationships with specific vendors that he finds to put out quality work. And as you can see, some of them are quite advantageous to the district. So I think you'll see the recommendations for fire protection, for roof repairs and irrigation services, all regular and routine items that we put out on a fairly routine basis. And then I know you already approved Section 7. Just wanted to mention on item 7.3, we have a resignation of one of our custodians, Joe Galello. Joe's been with us just over 5 years, 70 months. He's been really a terrific employee to the district. And over the last year, he's been tireless. Actually, in all of his time here, he's been tireless. He's the one who opens up the door in the mornings. He's here very early. He's been promoted to a head custodian position in another school district. I called that principal, who I happen to know, and let him know how happy we are for him. And again, just want to wish him well with his new endeavors. Really great guy. And we are asking the board also to increase the pay for monitors to supervise JV sporting events. And really the purpose behind that is, and this is really a 1-year request, and that's because the time required to do that work right now is just that much greater than it normally is. It used to be kind of the person doing the job could kind of be there, bookend the game a little bit on the beginning and on the end, and that was really the work that was involved. But now there's so much more work involved related to COVID, checking tickets, making sure people are vetted appropriately. And we're having trouble people wanting to do that work, quite honestly, because it's a lot more time, and it doesn't work out financially to people. So we're asking this year just to increase that for this final season, and I think we'll be in good shape there. Also, you may not have, the old question, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, this year for the students, there was, as we know, through school nutrition. That was all part of and covered through COVID. We also learned this week that the federal education department is extending that through all of next year for the students. So again, we don't want our students to be hungry. We want them a fed mind, and a fed stomach and a fed mind can go hand in hand. We want them to think about just learning. So again, something nice, and we'll work to try to drive up our participation. It's a lot easier to get people to eat when they don't have to wear masks. So hopefully next year, if we wear less masks, we'll be able to drive up that participation. So that's the quick update on those items, and I have budget items, but if there's any questions on the updated items?
Jim, I just wanted to say thank you, because when I was looking at the bids, particularly for the sprinklers, they were so discrepant. I couldn't understand why, so thank you for speaking to that.
Thank you. We did really well. We did really well on pricing, which is terrific.
Hey, Jim, the increase in the JV game supervision,
Yes.
how come it's not for the varsity games as well? Why is it just limited to JV?
So they were at a different scale previously, so the level we're asking for JV is the level that we're already at for varsity.
Okay.
So thank you for helping me clarify that. Okay.
Are we going to get a chance to discuss these items, particularly 5.6 and 5.7?
We can when we get through, do
Okay.
you want to do that in advance, or you want to do it when we
No,
get
I
through the
just-
item?
I just want to be able to comment on this.
I'm taking 5.6 by itself. I'll take it by itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you 10.
And Alex, if you would help me out, please. And
On to the last main event of the
on
night.
the larger part, and again, this is, this evening, the board's being asked to approve the proposed budget, which is the budget which will be put forward before the voters on May 18th. It's kind of Pauline's Super Bowl of events, as mine as well. It's a big day. If you recall, back on February the 24th, the superintendent provided information to the board on gave you an overview of what the budget was going to be. We subsequently, there were subsequent board meetings on March 6th, 24th, April 7th, last week the 14th, and today. So that just kind of gives you a recap of when the budget was proposed, the preliminary budget came out, and what we're asking the board to approve this evening. The total appropriation of the budget, if you go to the next page, Alex, it is unchanged at $80,280,000. That is a budget-to-budget change of 4.67%. And if you recall, and we'll see this later on, most of that is made up of the added expenses related to the debt service for the 2018 bond. We have a projected allowable tax levy of 2.47% when we apply the additional fund balances, which the board has asked the administration to do that and put forward in this budget. So again, the tax levy increase in the budget that people will vote on is 2.47%. How does that break down? We've kind of shown you over time how the budget is made up, where that 2.47 comes from. As you see, 1.7% of it supports the operating budget, which is the day in, day out items, your salary, your lights, your instructional supplies. And then the 0.77% of it supports the capital budget. And if you look, you see some numbers in parentheses there. The use of our debt service there supports or helps keep that tax increase down by about 2%. So again, the total tax levy increase is 2.47%. The highlights are the same. We have expanded summer programming. We have additional support for professional learning. We have a restoration of a world languages position. Again, we're meeting all of enrollment guidelines, expansion of flexible furnishings, and again, we're providing with additional learning resources to support the classrooms. And these are some of the things that came out as part of COVID learning last year too, where we've had more software supports and technologies. Some savings in putting the budget together. When we have turnover in teachers, what we find is that we have people who are earning at a higher level, and we bring people in at a lower cost. So that allows us to help with the development of our budget. We had favorable 2019-20 collective bargaining agreements with our CSCA unit, as well as with our teachers. We have reduced BOCES tuition cost, and that just is a factor of meeting our student needs. We are saving monies in our utilities. We have more LED lights. We have better systems controls that we're putting in place. And last year, about this time last year, we were asking you to take a look at sales tax, and we were rolling our forecast back by about $250,000. And what we found is that everybody found Amazon over the last year in mail order, and sales tax really held its own. So fortunately enough, we're back up at a higher level there. Again, we were at $750,000 last year for the budget, and it's $1 million this year, which is pretty much our experience this year. Increased costs that we've have to address this year. Of course, the 2018 capital debt service, healthcare rate increases, and when they're lower than 5%, you feel like you got lucky, and I think we got lucky. So it's kind of crazy that you have to say that, but when you're talking about healthcare, we know that's what happens.
Jim, that was at a lucky 4%?
That's correct. Yes. And for our retirees, it was actually a 0 year over year, so we did well. Our retirement system rate increases. Again, this is a cost that is assigned by each of the pension systems, the teacher's retirement system or the employee's retirement system. And what happens is a rate is established, and the district then has to pay a percentage of an employee's earnings based on the rate provided to us by those retirement systems. So that also accounts for part of that rate increase. I mentioned here our BOCES instructional technology support has increased, and a lot of that is related to things that we took on over the last year, working with John Sabalos. We asked the tough questions. John's got answers to all the tough questions. Are these programs being used? They are. And that's really what you want. So if you're spending the money on it, it's good to hear that John's looking at it, making sure that they're being used. And that's what we put before the board for this budget. And then we anticipate rent and improvements for our new office spaces. That goes hand in hand with the interior renovations I spoke of earlier, where administrative office spaces in the high school are being transitioned back to instructional spaces. So as we look at the revenue budget, it changes a little bit from the preliminary budget, and what we find is that that top line, our property taxes, the year-to-year increase, it was over $2 million. In the proposed budget, you see it's $1.6 million. Our state aid takes into account the additional $800,000 in our foundation aid that we spoke about at the last board meeting. We've adjusted our appropriated fund balance and increased our debt service reserves, and also adjusted our ERS reserves. So the total amount of the proposed budget of $280,000 remains unchanged, but what you have is a different mix of what makes up the increase of $3,580,000. And I guess I should say this is, I know it's a little bit more, it's a lot of information here. We're going to also have this up on the website so people will be able to see it if they have an interest in it. Again, we're working in the age of a tax levy with a tax cap. If you have a tax cap compliant budget, what do you need? You need 50% of the voters plus one vote. And this is a tax cap compliant budget. What would it look like to a homeowner in Pelham? And we've tried to give you three different scenarios here. Three different scenarios of based on home assessments, and then also different changes on each individual homeowner's change in their assessed valuation. So it's tough to give you an exact number with what it is, but like for an example, if you have a home that's assessed at $510,000, your assessed value changed by 2% this year. Your annual tax increase is $167 or 1.8% year to year. That's on the low side. On the higher side, obviously, if you look at example 3, you have a home assessed at $1,375,000. If your assessment increased by 6%, Your tax increase would be $1,451, or an increase year to year of 5.79%. So again, the 2.47% that we talk about, that talks about the levy that the district is raising to support the budget. Every homeowner's exact amount is going to vary based on the changes in your assessment year to year. The state and federal aid is a good news story this year. Again, as you remember, we received an additional $1.6 million from the state. $800,000 of it goes into the special aid fund, and that will be spent to use to support for one-time expenses related to COVID and things related to the last year. The other $800,000 was an increase to our foundation aid. That was part of the discussion at the last board meeting. All in all, as you know, just under $13 billion of the state budget is supported with federal dollars for this year, and hopefully they'll be able to support that in future years. But what we've done here is we've represented that other $800,000, half of that 1.6 that does go into this budget, you'll see on the foundation aid line, and you see on that top line, we have a nice increase of over $838,000, or a 23% increase, which is really great news. And a year-to-year difference, we've got an increase of just over $1.5 million, or 21%. So, like I said, this is really the good news story, and it's even better news next year if the state can hold up these numbers, because that's really what we're hoping for. The next is kind of how the change of the appropriated fund balance changed from preliminary budget to the proposed budget. This budget proposes using $2.1 million of your appropriated fund balances, or your savings account, to support this budget. And I won't bother reading all of this to you, but really it just provides you with an explanation of what makes up that $2.1 million. The latter part here is our expenditure budget, and this is really unchanged from the preliminary budget. And I know we spent the greater part of one Saturday actually going over all of this. So as Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape. We'll go over it quickly. Again, we've got a year-to-year increase of $3,580,000. Of particular interest, about midway down that sheet, there's a line that says Interfund Transfer Debt Service Fund, and you see it's $2,494,246. That's the debt service related to the 2018 capital work, and that's really, as you can see, a significant increase from a year to year, and that's to pay our debt service, and we don't expect that to jump like that from year to year either. So that's the good news. We expect that spend level to be rather steady over the next few years, at least getting to the 29-30 years when we'll start seeing some debt service drop off. To look at it another way, we can show it to you in a pie chart. 74% of that budget is dedicated to instructional programs, 17% to capital projects, and 9% to administrative expenses. New York State law prevents more than 10% of administrative expenses exceeding 10%, according to New York State law. This is an interesting sheet. It kind of gives you the side-by-side of what's driving our revenue. On the left-hand columns, as you see it, that makes up the $3,580,000 on a year-to-year basis. And on the right-hand columns, you can see the difference in the expenditures of what makes up what's driving our expenditures of that $3,580,000. We have to have a balanced budget. As you can see, the changes in your revenues equal your changes in your expenditures. So we do have a balanced budget here, and it's just a nice snapshot of giving the viewer an idea of kind of where the ups and downs are on your revenues and your expenditures. Lastly, I'll leave you where we started. Total appropriation of $80,280,000, the year-to-year of 4.67%, with a projected allowable tax levy increase and proposed increase of 2.47%, down 0.84% from the preliminary budget, which was 3.31%. So down almost 1% to 2.47%.
Thank you. So maybe we could take questions and comments as we go to that item. It's a good segue to section 5, which is financial reports and motions. 5.1, I'd like to take a motion to adopt the 2021-2022 school year budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So, any questions or comments?
I have a question, actually a comment for Jim and for Jackie. This is my third year on the board and the third budget cycle that I've gone through. I have to be honest with you, I don't think I was ever more prepared than this year. The work that you and Jackie did was above and beyond. The one-on-one sessions, the extra meeting that we had last week, I just think I was never more prepared, and I actually really enjoyed last week's meeting. I felt really good leaving that meeting knowing as much as I did, and I wanted to thank you personally for that, Jim.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm feeling very good about where we've come out, and especially to feel that way in a year where so much was thrown at us at the last minute in terms of, state and federal funding and all of that. I completely agree with Vinny, and personally, I feel like we are where we should be for this year. It's the right balance.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you, because I do think we've been so preoccupied with all things COVID this year that when it came to talking about the budget, it seemed like there wasn't a lot of public interest in it, to be sure. Although I've always thought that there's a lot more public interest than we hear about, that people don't talk about it, but they think about it and they see it. So, and they're concerned about it. And I think someone last meeting put it very well, that, that people are hurting. A lot of people are hurting in the community. Maybe not the people we hear from a lot, but they're out there. So I want to thank you for going the extra mile to cranking down the budget increase. I know we're paying for it out of reserves predominantly, but I have great confidence that we're not doing any serious damage to the reserve. So I think it's a proper use of that money. So thank you very much for paying attention to that, even though we've all been thinking about all sorts of other things.
Yeah, I think I want to say thanks in particular to the point that John was making at the end, looking at the reserves and what it means in the next years going forward, making sure we all had a good picture of what we were doing with what options we had, so that we can make a difference this year, because we know we need to, but also being mindful that we don't want to set ourselves up for trouble next year, because next year could continue to be a difficult year for people. So I think that was the best thing about this budget year. I know it took a lot of meetings, but really understanding the forecast and where we are on the bond, and being able to actually see the work from the bond getting there, I think is really great and encouraging. So I hope the community will be ready to support us with this budget, because I think we did a lot of work to get it where it is.
We spent so much time talking about the increase in debt service and the impact that it would have on the community, that I do want to emphasize what this operating budget is accomplishing. You highlighted it in your presentation, but as long as I've been on the board, we've talked about programs to support social emotional wellness, and this budget is accomplishing that in a more comprehensive way than we've been able to in my years on the board, making something like responsive classroom, which was in one elementary school when I started, at all 4 elementary schools in a very complete way, and talking with Ms. Chung about universal Steps Day, DBT type of programs at the middle school and high school, leaves me feeling like, along with many other things that we heard from the middle school, that we're really making some great comprehensive impacts on social emotional wellness, standing by our strategic plan. And I know from discussions about our foreign language needs that to have an additional world language teaching position, the issues that we've had in hiring the right science teachers and having enough to meet the demands at the high school, that we're able to accomplish that too, and certainly to keep up with the technology improvements and enhancements to our program that we've had in the last year in particular because of COVID, to be able to continue to support that. So I just think it's important. Well, I think it was important to have our discussion very focused on debt service and community impact of the tax levy increases, to also highlight what we are supporting in this budget.
And I think that, it all comes down at the end to how much of the reserves you end up using. So all of that preparation in advance allows us to get to that point, and hearing, what we're putting in and what we're enhancing and all of that is so important. And then it kind of comes down to, well, how much are we actually going to move from the debt service, from the reserves. And I just think, just to follow on to what Vinny said, I feel like our last meeting was a great collaboration and, a really open and honest talk about what we felt the priorities were this year from the community side. We kind of had already decided what our priorities were going to be on the district side with social emotional learning and making up for learning loss and all of that. But then we were able to come together and really find a way to make it happen and be respectful of the community and what's going on this year. So I feel really good about that. And I'm glad that we were able to come up with a very balanced and fiscally responsible answer.
And I want to thank you for giving us that direction. We appreciated the conversation last week, too. And Jim, Jackie, and the entire business office, we could not be more fortunate to have the team that we do there. So thank you for all the work, getting us to a really great place. And Jim and I will be happy over the next couple of weeks to get out to the community and share this work.
Your
And
roadshow.
the roadshow, yes. We look forward to seeing folks.
It's going to look a lot like what you just saw.
Yes, it will look very familiar if
But
folks
thank
are
you.
watching.
We've got a great group, and again, everybody working with all the department heads and yourself. So appreciate the direction, and we'll get to that Super Bowl. We'll get it across the finish line. That's the big goal.
And Pauline is gearing up for her first Pelham vote. And she's already, I'm confident we are in very good hands. So we're looking forward to that culmination of the budget vote on May 18th.
Along those lines, we have 100% clarity on in-person versus absentee?
Yes, we will be in person, but they have expanded the absentee to still include COVID for those who
Don't feel comfortable
coming in person. Yep. So check out the website. It has all the directions, guidance, applications, and processes on our website.
Very good.
And we are also going to be having the kids vote. So
We're voting in here, though, right?
we are voting in here, yes. That's
We
an
can't say
important
that
change.
enough times.
Thank you. You are correct. We will be doing the vote here in the middle school gym this year. So not at the high school. We'll have signage, direct people over here, but we will be doing the voting in here.
But they won't realize they can't get from there to here without going outside.
Right. Hopefully it'll be a nice day. Hopefully it's not a storm like we had a couple of years back there.
The bond.
And this weekend is registration, if you need to register to vote in that.
Yep.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, this brings us to item 5.2, which is a motion to approve the 2021-22 property tax report card. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Vinny and Jess. You want to add anything to this, Jim?
These are numbers as of really April 15th, and they can change, and final allocations are subject to the end-of-year audit and recommendation of the audit committee and final allocation by the board. So it's not final, but it's kind of where we think we are at this point in time, and really that's the important thing to note. We have to file this with New York State within 48 hours, I believe, of approval. So again, it's a step in the budget process and the end-of-year process, and again, it's not the last time you're going to see or hear about talking about allocation of reserves and different year-end balances.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Said that as one sentence. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'd like to take a consent of 5.3 through 5.5. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Eileen. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to take 5.6 by itself. It's a motion to approve high-risk spring sports at the Pelham Memorial High School. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Sue and Vinnie. Any questions or comments?
Comment? Question?
I'm looking to you because you said you want, yes, question?
It's back.
It's back.
Why? We
It's a
voted
new-
on this
It's a
already.
new season. We've approved it. Each season came with a separate resolution. So the sports tonight that we're approving are spring.
Boys and girls lacrosse,
Thank
boys
you.
rugby.
So I was unhappy with this the first time around. I'm not any happier with it now.
Yep.
Last time, I was a little tempered by the fact that we started testing. And that, I thought that would be a good way to monitor, how this was actually affecting our students.
Yeah.
I've since learned that a lot of the athletes don't want to be tested. So I feel like they're circumventing, some of the protections that we've tried to put in place for their benefit. So they don't, I know that the kids are concerned about not being the one responsible for their team going into quarantine. But we find out from other teams that their kids are positive tested, therefore we have to go into quarantine. So I don't know, I'm not happy with the situation as it is now. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about it. Have we got better participation from athletes recently, or?
In our surveillance testing program.
Sorry, really putting you on the
I
spot.
guess the hard part, while Julia's thinking of her answer,
I'm sorry, it's really bad to put you on the spot like that.
And I share all of your concerns, and I think I've shared that, with the board. The state has put us and the kids in a really in a really bad spot.
They're not taking responsibility for it.
Yeah, and right, and it really is. It's tough because we do want to provide a safe environment for the kids, and I have to say our coaches are doing an outstanding job of upholding protocols. So they really are doing the right thing by the kids with the teams and doing the best they can to provide a safe environment. To our knowledge, we don't have, as Julia said earlier, I don't think that we've seen much spread at all within the school and within school activities. Obviously, our students socialize in school and outside of school in some of those groups. So it's hard to necessarily separate one from the other. But it's tough to put kids in a position of being responsible for an entire team. And I don't have a good answer for that. If the state were to be, I think, my thought is if their quarantine procedures were a little bit more sensical, that might ease some of that pressure on students. When, you've got a situation where there's 40 students on a team, they're all outside, they're all wearing masks, they're all following protocols, and yet they all get quarantined because of one exposure. It's tough.
I feel like we've created all these incredible efforts to keep kids safe, but then we say, okay, go play sports. If one of you gets tested positive, then all of you have to stop. And all the other team you played has to stop. It's crazy.
And it keeps them out of school. We're trying to get them back in school.
So John, what are you suggesting, though? Are you suggesting that we don't have teams play?
I'm
Because
suggesting
I totally
that
disagree with you on that point.
I know you do, and I don't blame you. I'm just stating my particular frustrations and
I
my
think the
opinion.
coaches, as Dr. Champ said, are doing an unbelievable job. They're doing the best they can, and it's
I'm
in
not
the,
casting
it's in the
aspersions.
state's hands right now, and they need to look in the mirror and reevaluate these quarantine policies that they have.
I
because
couldn't
they're
agree with you
pathetic.
more. I completely have confidence that our coaches and our athletic director are doing everything possible. I have no doubt about that. That's not really my issue. My issue is putting us in this position of creating this, this situation. And I would really appreciate it if parents would, step up and make sure their kids who are playing sports are being tested. It's really as much the parents as it is the kids.
Yeah.
So,
For what it's worth,
I agree with you on that point.
For what it's worth, I am hearing that that the coaches, of course, they can't force anybody to do anything, but they are pretty much telling the athletes that this is what we're doing as a team. We're getting tested, and I don't know that if that's followed through and it's actually happening, because the parents do have to do the consent. But I'm hearing that the attitude is very much about testing. And I will say that aside from the fact that if you're the kid who got positive and made the team quarantine, where your social and emotional health is probably not that great, but in general, I think that this is making incredible strides with a lot of kids. Particularly, football is just such a big team, and what I'm hearing about the practices, and I know that it didn't end well, and that's not good, but I'm not hearing about a lot of positive cases, just a lot of quarantines. Right. So I was also very hesitant about winter. I thought winter was crazy because it was indoors, but again, I feel similarly that we can't be the only school who doesn't let our kids play. But I feel like spring is at least outside. And while the quarantine rules are what they are, I don't think that the kids are going to transmit so much. It just doesn't make any sense. So,
Julia, do you get the sense that there's any advocacy that can be done on behalf of the parents and coaches to try and change these rules? Because to me, it seems bothersome that you're talking about how you're in classrooms and students are inside with masks on, and you could be in the same classroom and not have, for a whole class period, and not necessarily have to quarantine. But just because by virtue that you're standing on the same field with a mask on outdoors, which is what we're encouraging kids to do in the way they socialize, they could get quarantined, just doesn't sit well for me. I felt very differently when it came to the winter sports indoors. It was kind of like the first day of school, where it was like this felt like very unnerving to think about where the numbers were, and the fact that we were putting kids indoors playing sports where they were going to come in close contact, masked or not, felt unsettling to me in a different way than kids playing outside with a mask. And if we're trying to get our children back in the classroom, it seems like unnecessary quarantines. I know these aren't your rules, but it just, I don't know. The fact that these two seasons ended the way that, well, volleyball's indoors, but the fact that football ended the way that it did, I agree testing is important, but I want, we're trying to get kids exposed to more school in-person time. Do you get the sense that there's any headway that others can make for you at the state level to?
I mean, I think part of it is contact sports are just considered high risk, because even if it's only a split, a couple of seconds that I'm with somebody else, I mean, you're running around and there's a lot of breath, and there's a lot of, the amount of, I guess, how much you're breathing is very different than when you're just sitting and learning.
I get that.
So, I think that's part of the reason why they're doing that. But again, I agree with you. I think, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a we have to follow what the Department of Health is asking us to do. And I think, one of the things that I've said to a few parents is, if you want to advocate for, change, it's going to have to be at the Department of Health level. Mm-hmm. Like, what Cheryl said earlier, we're just the messenger.
Absolutely.
And, asking me to change what we're doing, I can't.
You're not in a
I don't have the
position
authority to do that. So, if parents want to write to the New York State Department of Health, and if enough parents say, why don't you follow the CDC recommendation instead of doing what you're doing, I mean, that might make a difference.
And I agree. I think it's the state level. The county has been an incredible partner throughout this.
Yeah.
And they're simply interpreting the guidance that comes down from the state, so they don't have the latitude to change it either. It really is at the state level, and that's where there has been a time lag in updates. But hopefully,
it's also important for
I was going to say, as more data has been collected through high-risk sports through these few seasons, maybe it's time for them to revisit that and once again adjust.
We can only hope that they will. I completely agree that we're doing everything that we can. We're also doing the same thing that everyone in the section is doing. So I think that it's important for anybody who gets frustrated, and we all get frustrated with this, to remember that we're part of a section and we're all following the same rules. And I'm sure that the other team that had to quarantine was no happier about it than we are.
Right.
So we're all in this together in our section, and I think that the benefits of getting kids back in sports are well documented, and clearly there are a lot of kids and parents that want to participate. So I think it's up to us to do the best we can to let that happen. John, I agree with your frustration. I'm just not sure that there's anything at the local level that we can do to make it all work out.
We could vote against it.
Well, I wouldn't want to vote against bringing these sports back because of the benefits that it has for
Yeah.
kids.
No, I
Yeah.
played sports. My kids played sports. I'm a sports advocate. So I just, being put in this position is ridiculous.
I completely understand it,
Yeah, don't
and
love
it's
the
absolutely
position.
your right, to vote against it, and I would understand that.
And I think we should really encourage parents to follow follow the testing. They really got to encourage their kids to do
Yeah,
that.
agreed.
I have an answer for you, John. So I do have a list of all of the kids that are getting tested, and so yesterday we had 11 softball players get tested.
Yes. No softball.
We've had cheerleaders come, swim team, all of the volleyball players came and got tested. This was middle of March. So it kind of depends on the sport.
Sounds to me like
We've
it's
had certain teams
may not
come.
feel may break down, but all the sports you mentioned are predominantly women, right?
Yeah.
The teams get rewards if they have the
Yes,
most
I
number,
know.
high percentage of
there's
those
a good idea.
tested.
You
All
know,
right,
and
guys, you got to step it up.
Yeah, the expectation, I think, is definitely increased. And I'm going to say Mr. Hodge has been very helpful. The coaches have been helpful increasing that expectation and trying to set that norm. And I think looking to colleges is a real good example. College athletes are doing this. This is just a way of life. So we've tried to send
It's
that
very
message.
encouraging, actually.
Yep.
And they've had seasons end because of
Yeah. Yeah.
quarantines too, unfortunately. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Extension.
Okay. So then I'm going to take 5.7 to 5.10 as a consent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I think that was Eileen and Sue at the same time.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Any questions or comments or anything else, Jim, you wanted to add?
Just one question for Jim. We're approving a motion to accept notifications?
That's correct. So these were already approved administratively.
I see. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So 5.11, do I have a motion to accept our various generous donation? Nobody wants to accept the donation?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Jess. Such hesitancy for such a generous donation. So I'm going to read it out loud, and then I'd like Sue to read some nice words from our president and vice president of the Pelham Education Foundation. So first, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the Pelham Board of Education, that we do hereby accept the donation of $103,000, $791. It's such a big number, I have to say it again. $103,791 for grant 2108 return to school for infrastructure reopening costs, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation. Further resolved that the superintendent and Board of Education in Pelham do accept the monetary donation of $500 to the Pelham Memorial High School for monetary scholarship awards for the 2021 graduating class in honor of Walter Arrington, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, Wayne Arrington. Be it further resolved that the superintendent and Pelham Board of Education do hereby accept donations to the class of 2021 to offset the costs of the 2021 senior prom, given the fundraising efforts to support this event were hampered by the pandemic caused by COVID-19. Such fund shall be accounted for in the high school extra classroom activity fund. And be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the Board of Education in Pelham, that we do hereby accept the donation of $1,833.06, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Memorial High School reunion class of 1954. So Sue.
I would love to read some comments from two members of the Pelham Education Foundation Board. The first being Vice President Rosemary Maggiore. She says, "We have been working very hard to find meaningful ways to support the district's reopening efforts for several months. When the plan was presented, the stars aligned and we were ready because on our end we had done a mini fundraiser this past fall and are now in the middle of our annual Blue Ribbon campaign. I think it's a testament to how well our organizations work together and a reflection of how important supporting the district plan is to our board. The plan is clear and thoughtful, which made this a home run for us." Thank you, Rosemary, for all the hard work that you've done. As Dr. Champ said earlier, not only did she help shepherd this through, but she actually helped with the writing of the grant, I believe, herself. So many thanks for that. And then I want to end with Julia Fuller Nakayama, who's the Pelham Education Foundation president. And she says, "Everyone on the PEF Board of Directors is delighted to partner with the district to enable a return to full-time in-person instruction. During this challenging time, we've been very focused on supporting the highest need areas. We have also been very conscious of being good stewards of the funds the community has generously entrusted to us. We can't think of a better way to support the Pelham schools and our students than by providing the essentials for school reopening."
Very nice. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to again thank them. I
It's
continue
incredible.
to be so humbled and appreciative of their generosity and support.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, this brings us to 6.7, policy monitoring and governance. 6.1 is policy 5633, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. This is the third reading. Eileen.
So nothing has changed since the first and the second reading. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can I add just a couple, not about
course.
the policy, but just some
Yeah,
updates? There are 2 single gender-neutral bathrooms at Hutchinson. We finally
Excellent.
verified that. The question has come up. So we were working on
Accessible to students.
yes,
yeah.
yeah. We were working on signage over the last couple weeks, so there will be student-accessible single or gender-neutral bathrooms. And also just wanted to highlight that a student, Jordan Schwartz, presented to the Wellness Committee last week before. Really tremendous presentation by one of our high school students about the need for a more accessible gender-neutral bathroom. So we'll be certainly looking at the recommendations that Jordan made, as well as potentials within the renovations that are going on at the high school to add at least one additional gender-neutral bathroom accessible to high school students, in addition to the one that's in the middle school already.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I lost track of the timing. I forgot that we had never talked about that, but I was able to attend that meeting, and Jordan spoke so eloquently and just so rationally and made such an incredible case that it made me want to go out and build a bathroom, which of course I couldn't do. But I hope that we're able to incorporate it into, in more ways in the different buildings, because it's critical. It's critical.
Yeah, I wanted to also echo what Dr. Champ and Eileen said about Jordan's presentation. If you have an opportunity to look at it, they did a lot of research. They involved a lot of student voice in the presentation. It was very impressive, very thoughtful, and brought up a lot of points that we hadn't really thought about when we were considering about signage and placement of these bathrooms. So thank you, Jordan, for teaching us a little bit more about what people need in the way of a gender-neutral bathroom. Thank you.
Such a great example of increasing student voice and agency in the way we do things in our schools. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6.2 is policy 7330, searches and questioning of students at second reading.
So also no changes on this since the first reading. You'll remember that we had this policy way back. We took it back to the committee and did a bunch of work on it to make it really reflect more simply what our intentions were. And I think we ended up in a good place with that. And so we started over again with the first reading. So now this is the second, but nothing has changed since last time.
Any public comment?
I'm sorry?
Any public comment?
No, not that I know of.
No?
No.
And we won't be taking a vote tonight, right? We're going to third reading.
Third reading,
Third reading,
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Great.
I just wanted to say that I'm sorry that Lynn and Sean are not here. They were incredibly helpful, giving some practical feedback on how this kind of policy would work at the middle school, and they gave a lot of very useful input in going over this policy.
As well as the high school administrators, they were also very rational and helpful with what really happens.
It's certainly those building administrators at the policy meetings that bring so many of these policies to life, or to see where the deficiencies are, to know, where we need to adapt and change some of our policies. Okay, Pauline, since we were talking about motions, did I vote properly on the last one? Do I have to go back to something? The third reading. Okay. Yes, we voted but didn't take a motion. So could I have a motion to approve policy 5633, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms?
So moved.
Thank you. Eileen and Leah, any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I felt like something was a little off in there. Okay, we already did section 7, so this brings us to section 8, pupil personnel services. We have Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. A second?
Second?
Thanks, Leah. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 9 is new business. Covered a lot of terrain today, so. Okay, we have nobody from the public, so this moves us to section 11, adjournment of the meeting.
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Vinnie. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night.